Okay, my name's Kevin Abbott. I'm a support consultant for Logan Consulting in the AX practice. Been with Logan for about a year and a half now. I wanted to cover the landed cost module in configuration, some key concepts, as well as go through a demonstration. On the agenda, we're going to touch on topic definition, what is landed cost and why it matters. And then we'll talk about some use case examples and some of the key concepts you want to know about landed cost. And then we'll touch on some of the main module configuration and setup. There is a lot of setup involved. So I'm going to try not to bore you with going through setup slides, and maybe we can look at some of the configuration and setup within Dynamics. I'm going to touch on our demonstration. And then I'm going to touch on, I'm going to go through a simple process flow of a day in the life of a customer that might be using landed cost or might want to use landed cost. And then leveraging that process flow, we'll go over a demonstration showing what it looks like as you're walking through it in Dynamics. And then we'll finalize with a summary of what we've talked about. First things first, some topic definitions. What is landed cost? And landed cost is really a way to help really streamline your shipping operations so that you can have control and visibility, both financially and logistically, from a reporting perspective, as well as being able to impact your inventory appropriately for things that might have been transported via freight, sea, or any sort of transportation that you have a third-party transportation company involved that you might receive an invoice for, affect your inventory value. Like I mentioned, the landed cost can account for 40% or more of your total cost for each imported item, which is, it's a large cost impact for your inventory. We want to make sure that we get it right. And what landed cost excels at is it gives you accurate and apportioned estimates that allow your business to account for expected costs, but provide smaller variances from your estimated cost to your actual costs. Moving on to some use case examples, you can use landed costs if you're purchasing finished goods or raw materials from a vendor in China and shipping that to a warehouse in the States. You're going to need to account for land transportation, maybe sea or air transportation, and all of that impacts your inventory when you land it in the United States. We want to get good and accurate estimated costs and actual costs once we actually get the transportation vendor invoice. And then another example would be transferring finished goods or raw materials from England to a warehouse in the United States within your same legal entity. Maybe you're moving inventory, your finished goods from England to a warehouse in the States so you can ship it within the States to 10 customers. A couple of key concepts that we want to keep in mind while we're using landed costs is that landed cost excels at being able to provide an accurate estimated cost for your inventory before you've received any invoice from your shipping partner or vendor. And you can include those estimated costs on your inventory goods when you sell them to your end customers, which allows you to have much smaller variances in your COGS entries when you've actually sold those goods. Landed cost also allows you to true up your cost after a voyage has been completed. When you've entered the invoice journal for those transportation vendors, it will adjust your inventory goods cost to true up for your actuals. So it'll reverse your estimated and then apply your actuals so that your inventory value is accurate. Another thing to mention is that transportation management and landed costs are similar, and it can be confusing for some people if they don't know what each module excels at. Transportation management typically excels at outbound operations and anything that's going out of your business. Landed cost excels at inbound operations, like purchasing from a vendor or transferring goods from one warehouse to another. That serves them that inbound operation. Another thing to mention for transportation management and landed cost is that they don't share reference data for entities like cost setup, journeys, legs, anything like that. Those need to be set up separately. Typically, you don't want to use transportation management and landed costs both for inbound operations because there's conflicting behavior. You want to keep them completely separated if you're going to be using both of them. And then I mentioned landed cost excels at tracking, costing, and goods in transit processing. Transportation management does not have a goods in transit processing concept. And so landed cost it's implemented as part of the landed cost module, and landed cost excels in that specific area. And then, like I mentioned in our use cases, landed cost can be used for purchase orders or for transfer orders. So now we're going to dive into some configuration. I'll keep this short and touch on what these fields are and their setup inside of Dynamics. First, if you're planning on using landed cost, you need to make sure that you've enabled the feature in feature visibility. If you don't have it enabled, you can't use it. When you're in the landed cost parameters, in the general section, one main thing to set up is your defaults, your journal defaults. Here at the bottom, you can see your item arrival journal name. You want to make sure that you have an arrival journal set up. You also want to make sure that you have an over and under delivery movement journal and transfer journal set up. The goods in transit over receipt grace period, you can set up, it's not necessarily needed. Moving on to landed cost parameters, the status updates are useful for your logistics team when they are updating voyages so that you can have an accurate representation quickly on what step a voyage is in. If it's just been created, if it's in transit, if it's been costed, what status is it in? And there are buttons on the voyage that help you control that, assign the values for when you click those buttons. Within the voyage creator, the portion I want to talk about here is the tolerances section. You have the outside volume tolerance and outside weight tolerance. Your tolerances are set up on your shipping containers, your shipping container types specifically. As we'll see later in another slide, you have to set up a volume and a weight for a specific shipping container. This allows you to set up some tolerances for a typical shipping container volume and weight, but you want to set up a tolerance to allow an over volume or an overweight. Typically, it's best practice to set these tolerances to 0 and set your volume and weight to your maximum volume and your maximum weight. Moving on to the voyage statuses. Your voyage statuses can be assigned to a voyage. It's typically used purely for reporting around how your voyages are doing. Are there any that are stuck? It allows the logistics team and logistics managers to get a quick view of how your voyages are moving throughout the system. You can assign voyage statuses to all levels of a voyage. So the voyage, the shipping container, which is a sub bucket within the voyage, a folio, which is another sub bucket within the voyage, at a purchase order level, or even at an item level on the voyage line. It's used to inform users about the status of the level and limit and the cost areas around it. And then moving on to the shipping container types, you need to specify a description, weight, volume, and whether or not their type is returnable. Typically, these types are the length of your shipping container. A lot of customers will define different shipping container types for a 40-foot shipping container, 20-foot shipping container, 10-foot shipping container, etc. And then be able to apply the specific weight and volume associated with that container. And then once you've set up your shipping container types, you can actually create specific shipping containers. And then you'll use those shipping container types to assign to a specific container. Each voyage will have a container. You can reuse containers if appropriate, but typically Each voyage will have a unique shipping container that will be used once. If the physical shipping container is used again on another voyage, it's best practice to create another shipping container for it that represents that same physical one, but in the system it's a separate shipping container so that you can separate your costs and reporting per shipping container and have them be very explicit and different. Moving on to more configuration setup. The cost type codes represent specific types of costs that can be involved in a specific voyage. What customers typically do is they'll set up one for C when the portion of the voyage and that company that is specific to shipping over the sea, they will have one cost type code for that C. So you can apportion costs to specifically C. Another one for air if the inventory is flying on a plane. And then another one for a truck or port to a warehouse once the vessel has landed, and then you need to drive that goods from your port actually to your warehouse. That's going to be another vendor, another transportation company that's going to handle that. So you'll set up cost type codes for each one of those. And then within a cost type code, you need to set up your posting definitions. We'll touch on that once we look at the cost type codes that I've set up in my demo environment. The main reason why people use land costs is this auto cost section, where you can set up specific estimated costs for each combination in the header, a combination of account code, which would be either your shipping company vendor group, mode of delivery, shipping container type, or the specific ports included in a transaction. Cost definition. For each line, you'll assign a cost type code, an apportionment method, a category, and a cost value. We can move on to the next slide here, which shows you briefly what that auto cost setup might look like. Up here at the top, I've set up the account code to all. That means that for every shipping company, this shipping company is grayed out, so it's not being used. For all shipping companies and for any deliveries blank, for your shipping container type of 40 foot, and then from your port, Yantian to Le Havre, we've got these three lines of our auto cost. For your C cost type code, your estimated cost will be $10,000. For your TCHK cost type code, another $500. For your HERH cost type code, another $500. And so you can set these up. All of these apportionment methods are set up as volume. You can set them up as fixed. You can set them up as a bunch of different options. I think there's 8 different types of options. From what I've seen, volume and fixed are typically your standard ones. And so now moving through some more configuration setup, you also need to set up your shipping ports like we saw on our auto cost definition. Those are leveraged not only in the auto cost definition, but also in leg definition. We'll see legs further down in this slide. You define shipping port and then the associated description with that port. You also need to set up journey templates, which kind of leverages those legs that you'll set up and the shipping ports within those legs to define a multi-leg route that goods will take between 2 ports. Every voyage is going to have a journey template. You'll leverage that during your auto cost setup as well. And then legs are specific parts of a journey that will define your journey template in the system. You assign a description, to and from ports, and a specific delivery method. And you can tie it to a voyage status upgrade via the track and control setup. Track and control setup is what we're going to talk about on this next slide, which is a pretty slick set of functionality for reporting specifically on your landed costs. It also allows you to automatically populate some fields from voyages to your transfer orders or to your purchase orders. You can set up lead times. You can set up automatic status updates. And they're each defined for a specific leg of the journey. So it allows some things to happen behind the scenes without explicit need for the business user to manually update some fields or manually change some statuses. You can set up your tracking control center so that it happens in the background. And then there's some default data entities that automatically are available as part of enabling the landed cost module. You can automatically create voyages and associated voyage information through these data entities. You can enter cost transactions, container activities, vendor invoices, and such. Next, we're going to be talking about process flow. So hopefully, once we get into the system, if there's anything unclear, we can clear it up a little bit. So we'll move on to our process flow example. This is what I'm going to be covering in our demonstration. I specifically developed a process flow around transfer orders. If you're using it for purchase orders, it would be very similar. Slight adjustments within the actual transfer order or the purchase order processing, but the voyage interaction is very similar. First, you create your transfer order and your voyage status. It would equal created once you create your voyage. And your transfer order is ready to be shipped. You would ship the transfer order via the voyage. At that point, even before you ship the goods, your costs will be automatically estimated, and you can see your estimated costs on your voyage. Then once you ship it, the goods will automatically move into goods in transit. As a logistics person can update the status of goods in transit. Once the goods arrive to their destination, you can receive the goods. The estimated costs will be posted automatically, and we'll look at the posting definition for that and the associated account and all the entries. The goods will automatically move to the destination warehouse once received. You'll pause until you get the shipping vendor invoice so that we can actually apply the actual costs. So you'll receive your shipping vendor invoice, then you'll post the vendor invoice journal with your actual cost. And then the system will automatically update your inventory value with your actual cost. The logistics team can update your wage status to cost it. And then that basically rounds out a voyage. Once it's been costed, that means that everything has been run. And there's some validation within there so that you can't set the status to costed until all lines on a voyage have been costed. So now, if there's no other questions, we'll be moving into the demo, and we'll see how businesses can benefit in D365. And we'll go over the configuration as well, just so we can see some of the screens associated with what I've been speaking. Let's re-log into our sandbox. Couple tabs. Like I mentioned, I'll be going through what we looked at as far as our process flow as in a demo. But first, let's go into our and also manage so it's a little bit easier to read. We can go under setup. We touched on most of the landed cost parameters. There's not really anything in here that we need to touch on that we didn't see in the presentation. The feature visibility is under this landed cost parameters. This is where you will need to activate it to leverage landed cost functionality. Next, we'll go to our voyage status. This allows you to set up a relationship for your statuses and provides a way to step through the statuses for a voyage. As you can see, I've created 8 different statuses here. And for each status, a parent is defined. Basically, a parent is the previous status for your current voyage status that you're setting up. As you can see, as I walk down the list, each parent is the previous voyage status. And this allows you to set up a bunch of different statuses for your voyage. You can have as many as you want with the standard. it allows you to have very accurate and very granular reporting for your voyages. Next, we'll go to our container setup. And the two main things here are your shipping containers and your shipping container types. We'll go into our shipping container type. I've got a 20-foot and a 40-foot setup. You need to specify the string that will be your type, a description of that specific container, and then set up your volume and your weight. The volume and your weight are defined as the inventory unit master. So you'll see that there's no actual unit defined here. The unit defined on your items is what's used found. And then moving into the shipping containers, basically this is just a string that you'll specify. And then for each shipping container, you need to specify a type that was defined in a previous step. And then under costing setup, here we'll touch on our cost type codes. You typically want to set your debit type to item, your credit type to vendor, so that it correctly assigns your costing to your item and then pulls it out of your vendor account. And then each of these entries will be posted to your clearing account that you've assigned. There are estimates and actuals going in and out of this account as we're stepping through our demonstration. Both of these have the same setup. It's just that they're a different cost type code, which allows you to separate your different shipping vendors. And then we'll move down into the auto costs because this is what we care about the most. When you're setting up your auto costs, the information here is also captured in your header. You can assign your auto costs at multiple different cost areas. So you can assign it at the voyage level, which basically means that everything on the voyage will share the cost values here. You would only set this up if you were certain that from a voyage perspective entirely, your air cost type would only cost $100. But if you wanted to be a little more granular, you can set it at the shipping container level because you can have multiple shipping containers on a voyage. That way you can separate it more and be more deliberate in your auto cost and in your estimates. You can also set it at the folio level, the purchase order level, the item level, or the transfer order line level. I've set it up at the voyage level for this demo because it's easier to understand. Each one, as you get further down into this, a little bit more complicated. And then in your delivery information setup, this is where you set up your tracking control center and your shipping ports. I've got a China shipping port and a US Dallas shipping port. You will want to set up what is basically a generic shipping port that can be used in your leg and journey template definitions so that you can begin and end certain legs of your journey and not have it actually have any impact on your own costs. And then in your tracking control center, I have a few different ones set up here. Per the Microsoft documentation, there's two that you want to set up, and that is the shipping container activities, both the shipping container activities. It is advised by Microsoft to set these up at your load leg. And as you can see, they leverage your from and to port and your generic loaded delivery. Basically, this means that it's going to copy your estimated end date from your shipping container activity into your expected date for your goods in transit order and for your purchase order lines into your confirm receipt date. And then move into the shipping information. Each voyage has a vessel, which is a container that folds your shipping containers. There's a lot of different levels of containing data for voyages. And a vessel is basically your next level down below a voyage. It really equates to a voyage. You can only assign one vessel to one voyage. but it does allow you to assign a mode of delivery to that specific vessel. And then in your multi-leg journey setup, this is where you set up your legs and your journey templates. So we'll look at the legs first. I've set up some generic ones: load, customs, local, at the warehouse, and then our China and Dallas leg. Typically, every company will have a load, customs, local, at warehouse, and then the specific legs that matter to them, where the goods are actually going. I only have the one set up. And then in our journey templates, that's where we use those legs to define how the inventory will travel and allow you to define what specifically is going to happen on the inventory throughout its life cycle from A to Z. I've set up a very basic journey template here where it loads, it's shipped from China to Dallas, and then it enters customs. And so that's the basic setup to process voyages. Let's start a voyage. First, I'm going to create a transfer order because that's what we defined in our process flow. In my demo, we're going to pretend that our purchasing department accidentally purchased some inventory directly into our finished goods warehouse, but it's actually raw materials. We don't want the raw materials in our finished goods warehouse. We're going to ship it over to our raw materials warehouse. So I'm shipping it from 13, which is my finished goods warehouse, into 11, which is my raw materials warehouse. And we'll add my item. I've got my AAO1 here. We accidentally bought 100 of it into our finished goods. We need to ship it over to our raw materials. So we created it, saved it, and now we have a transfer order that's been created. Let's go over to our landed costs and all voyages. From here, we'll create a new voyage. We'll set up any sort of description that you want. It's going to be voyage 4, FG to RM. And this is where we assign our vessel. You can reuse vessels, as you can see here, or you can create a new one. Vessel date, and then description, and then mode of delivery. I only have the one set up, so we'll use that. Go back and assign the one that I just created. And then booking reference and external voyage ID. These are basically pretext fields that you can use to populate with any sort of useful information, any sort of external IDs that you might have. Then we'll choose our journey template. I only have the one, journey 1. And then the mode of delivery defaulted from the vessel that I chose. You can then override that here. Shipping company. If you have a specific vendor account that is defined as a shipping company, when you click this down arrow, it'll populate here. I do not have any in my environment right now. It's not a necessary field to populate. And then your bill of lading. If you have a bill of lading ID, populate that here. We'll create it, and it automatically opens up our voyage editor for our voyage number 16. And this is where you choose either purchase order or transfer order that you want to link to your voyage. When you first open this, it will default these values to 0. And it can cause some issues when you're looking for what you want. I see my transfer order. I clicked it. There's nothing, no inbound orders, nothing to choose, because our days forward and our days back is set to 0. If you want to make sure that you get everything that's available, you can set up 300 as an arbitrary value. You can look back a day or 365 days, whatever works for you to get your value to pop up. But these days forward and days back will cause issues with users if they don't understand it. Fortunately, it saves so that the next time they open this form, they won't have to do it. First time, they'll have issues.
I missed it, Kevin. How is that expected date being calculated? That lead time set up somewhere?
Yeah, the expected date is calculated from the transfer order. It defaulted to 3/3 based on, I think it's based on the item that I have selected.
In the lead time on the item, default order settings, probably something like that.
I didn't actually set that up as part of this demo. This might be an artifact from over into 30 days. I'll have to get back to you on exactly where that was populated because it's not 30
Okay.
days. It was 5 days out, right?
Yeah.
3 or 7 days
Mhm.
a week out. So
5 days. You're right.
I think I believe it's based on the default order settings, but I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know for sure.
Okay.
So we're in our Voyage editor and we have our one Voyage that's selected for our quantity of 100. You can either select the header, which will then select all the lines on that transfer, or you can select specific lines on a transfer order. I only have one line on my transfers. So I'm going to just select the one. And then once you've selected that, you'll add it to the staging list. It'll remove it from this grid. Once you're done adding all the transfer orders and all the transfer ordering lines, you'll view your staging list. And this will show you everything that you've added to that voyage. I only have the one line. You can add it to an existing shipping container if you have one that is open and available, or you can just create a new one. So we'll add it to a new shipping container and you can choose an existing container here, or you can right click view details and create a new container. We'll say it's 20 foot and here's our shipping container. It automatically defaults your shipping container type. Your journey template defaults from your voyage. And then you can specify your ship date, your bill of lading, your measurement, and your unit. All of these are optional, not required. So then we'll hit OK. You'll see a little thing in your action center saying that your voyage has been created and 2 auto costs have been found. And then it removes it from your upper grid. And now you've got your lower grid, an existing shipping container on your voyage. The voyage has been created, voyage 4, finished goods to raw materials. The voyage status automatically created with 10 created. This status is updated when you update your voyage, or when the logistics team would update their voyage. And then we have our voyage lines down here. Our shipping container, our folio, our item number, and this number is the transfer order associated with this line. It displays our vessel, our from and to ports, and then our journey. The first thing I want to look at is under this general tab in inquiries, we have our cost inquiry. This is going to show our estimated costs for our 2 cost inputs. And because I have a very basic example, this isn't going to be very useful, but under the view, you can view your cost inquiries with a lot of different options. You can look at it from a voyage perspective, 600 total, but it doesn't split it out for cost type code. You can add cost type code and see our errancy. And as you can see, it gives you your estimated in your transaction currency, and then it also gives you your estimated in your accounting currency. We have no actual costs yet because we have not received any sort of invoice. We'll go back to our voyage, and under the manage tab, under voyage update, these are the buttons that the logistics person can press to update this status. If I click documents received, you'll see that this documents received flag was automatically set to yes. And then let's say we shipped it out. So we're going to ship our transfer order. You can do this from the transfer order, or you can do this from the Voyage. We'll choose the quantity that we want to ship. Do the full 100. Operation completed. You'll see the status is created. If I refresh this, it changes to shipped. If I look in our transactions and transactions detail in our physical voucher, so I've shipped it. The status is shipped. And then the logistics team can go in here and say in transit. And then our Voyage status changes from created to get to 20 get, so that anyone that's looking at this Voyage can automatically see that it's in transit. And then let's say the inventory finally arrives at the warehouse. The team can come in here and receive the transfer order. They can receive it from the transfer order, or they can receive it from this Voyage. Again, you'll need to say what we received. Do the full 100. And while that's processing, I'm going to open our GL and our trial balance. So that's done. And so now we'll see the status change from shipped to received. From our set, the 600 150 account should be hit once our inventory is received. We'll see this bottom transaction here, our $600 in estimated costs, has been posted to this clearing account. The next step, we receive our invoice from our shipping company. We need to process our invoice for that. Under AP, we'll go to our invoice journal, create a new invoice journal. Then we'll go into our lines. You select the vendor we just got our invoice from, international shipping. Our invoice date is today. You'll need to populate this credit value before you can use this select Voyage function. Once you populate your credit value, you select your Voyage costs. Here you can choose your cost area and then your specific Voyage. We're going to leave it as Voyage, and then we're going to choose our cost for our Voyage number 16. This populates our cost type code so that we can allocate our costs. We'll say that for the air, for the $75 that we have, we're going to select it and then mark selected. And so now we've got 0 remaining, total of 75. Our expected allocation was 100, but we actually allocated 75. Then we'll hit OK. And it will add a line to this entry. The description is the Voyage number, so we can help tie it out. Then we'll post this. Now that it's posted, let's rerun our trial balances and look at this 600 150 account. We see that there is a reversing entry for the 75 that we actually paid for the transportation company. And then the remainder of that 100 for that cost area is also debited out, fully reversing that 100 that was estimated. And then, so now we can refresh this. And the final step would be the logistics team coming in here. I guess I probably missed the ready for costing, which would indicate that we've received the invoice. But to finally tie it out, you would hit costed. There is a validation here that if you don't have all the costs costed, you can't actually run it. So if we go back into our cost inquiry screen, we'll see that we have this first line estimated at 100, the actual was 75, but we have one other line that hasn't been accounted for. And so you cannot finalize, you cannot set the Voyage status to costed without all of the lines and all of the cost types being set to costed. In summary, what is the landed cost module? Landed cost module is a quick and easy way to allow automatic and accurate estimates to be applied to your inventory value for inbound operations. It automates a lot of journal entries for estimated costing, and it reduces variances significantly. We covered some key elements of configuration like auto costing. Then we ran through the flow and an associated demo of that flow.